from Memoirs of Extraordinary Popular Delusions Crowds by Charles Mackay. And I realize that some of you might see this sign backwards, and that's okay. All right. If you really want to read it frontwards, go to my description. And if you do know how to make my camera switch when I'm live, that'd be great. Let me know. Okay. So I am aware that it is backwards. So it's for some of you. All right. So my name is May Doldal. I live in Honolulu, Hawaii with my husband, Jamel, and our 7-year-old son, Jordan. Back in 2009, I had over $40,000 of credit card debts, which I paid off by April of 2016, as well as our family's net worth had increased by over $500,000. We're making almost $500 a month in passive income, and I quit my job working at a local bank. December 23rd, 2016 was my last day, and I became a part-time finance freedom coach, coaching clients to do what I did, which is not only pay off debt, but create passive income at the same time so that you have more free time to spend with your family and do what you love. Okay, so let's begin. I am reading this book for summer break. I have a son, he's 7. He's not in school this summer. So I have him. So all I'm doing is reading from my blog. My blog has a lot of great content during the school year. Hi, there he is. Say hi. Hi. It's got a little cold today. But anyway, so I'm reading this book, a free ebook, and it is a book recommended by financial advisors. It's referred to in famous books on finance. So I highly recommend you check it out. It is free because it is an older book. So the link to it is in my blog, yesfinanciallyfree.com. And if you want a free ebook, Working Parents Guide to Financial Freedom, if you want to join my mastermind program, if you want to learn more about the 7-Day Finance Freedom Challenge, make 2 streams of passive income in 7 days, go to the blog, yesfinanciallyfree.com. You can also get a free ebook when you join my email list, Working Parents Guide to Financial Freedom. So put in your first name, email address, hit the big red yes button. You get on my email list and you get that ebook. Okay, so I'm going to start reading from page 81. Briefly, what we have been reading is the South Sea Company was created in England. They are an import-export company. They don't do too much business. They're not hugely profitable, but they take on the national debt, and then the shares of the company go up. They bust in 8 months, and now everybody's trying to figure out who to blame because a lot of people lost money. The people who bought it at the high and then it fell, they lost their life savings, all these kinds of things. So they want someone to be punished. All right, so here we go. Page 81. This was the day on which Mr. Craigs, the elder, expired. That means he died. The morrow had been appointed for the consideration of his case. It was very generally believed that he had poisoned himself. It appeared, however, that grief for the loss of his son, one of the secretaries of the Treasury, who had died 5 weeks previously of the smallpox, preyed much on his mind. For this son, dearly beloved, he had been amassing vast heaps of riches. He had been getting money, but not honestly, and he for whose sake he had betrayed his honor and sullied his fame was now no more. The dread of further exposure increased his trouble of mind and ultimately brought on an apoplectic fit in which he expired. He left a fortune of $1.5 million, which was afterwards confiscated for the benefit of the sufferers by the unhappy delusion he had been so mainly instrumental in raising. One by one, the case of every director of the company was taken into consideration. A sum amounting to £2,014,000 was confiscated from their estates towards repairing the mischief they had done, each man being allowed a certain residue in proportion to his conduct and circumstances with which he might begin the world anew. Sir John Blunt was allowed 5,000 L out of his fortune of upwards of 183,000 L. Mr. Edward Gibbon, 10,000 L out of 106,000 L. Sir John Lampert, 5,000 L out of 72,000 L. Others, less deeply involved, were treated with greater liberality. Gibbon, the historian, whose grandfather was the Mr. Edward Gibbon, so severely molested, has given, in the memoirs of his life and writings, an interesting account of the proceedings in Parliament at this time. He owns that he is not an unprejudiced witness, but as all the writers from which it is possible to extract any notice of the proceedings of these disastrous years were prejudiced on the other side, statements of the great historian became of additional value, if only on the principle adi alterum partem, his opinion is entitled to consideration. In the year 1716, he says, my grandfather was elected one of the directors of the South Sea Company, and his books exhibited the proof that before his acceptance of that fatal office, he had acquired an independent fortune of 60,000 L, but his fortune was overwhelmed in the shipwreck of the year 1720, and the labors of 30 years were blasted in a single day. Of the use or abuse of the South Sea scheme, or the guilt or innocence of my grandfather and his brother directors, I am neither a competent nor a disinterested judge. Yet the equity of modern times must condemn the violent and arbitrary proceedings with which would have disgraced the cause of justice. Hi, relationship guru, welcome. And rendered injustice still more odious. No sooner had the notion awakened from its golden dream than a popular and even a parliamentary clamor demanded its victims. But it was acknowledged on all sides that the directors, however guilty, could not be touched by any known laws of the land. The intemperate notions of Lord Molesworth were not literally acted on, but a bill of pains and penalties was introduced, a retroactive statute to punish the offenses which did not exist at the time they were committed. The legislature restrained the persons of the directors, imposed an exorbitant security for their appearance, and marked their character with a previous note of ignominy. They were compelled to deliver upon oath a strict value of their estates, and were disabled from making any transfer or alienation of any part of their property. Against a bill of pains and penalties, it is the common right of every subject to be heard by his counsel at the bar. They prayed to be heard, their prayer was refused, and their oppressors, who required no evidence, would listen to no defense. It had been at first proposed that 1/8 of their respective estates should be allowed for the future support of the directors, but it was especially urged that, in the very shades of opulence and guilt, such a proportion would be too light for many, and for some might possibly be too heavy. The character and conduct of each man was separately weighed, but instead of the calm solemnity of a judicial inquiry, the fortune and honor of 33 Englishmen were made the topics of hasty conversation, the sport of a lawless majority, and the basest member of the committee, by a malicious word or a silent vote, might indulge his general spleen or personal animosity. Injury was aggravated by insult, and insult was embittered by pleasantry. Allowances of 20 L or 1 S were facetiously moved. A vague report that a director had formerly been concerned in another project by which some unknown persons had lost their money was admitted as a proof of his actual guilt. One man was ruined because he had dropped a foolish speech that his horse should feed upon gold, another because he was grown so proud that one day at the treasury he had refused a civil answer to persons much above him. All were condemned absent and unheard in arbitrary fines and forfeitures, which swept away the greatest part of their substance. Such bold oppression can scarcely be shielded from the omnipotence of Parliament. My grandfather could not expect to be treated with more lenity than his companions. His Tory principles and connections rendered him obnoxious to the ruling powers. His name was reported in a suspicious secret. His well-known abilities could not plead the excuse of ignorance or error. In the proceedings against the South Sea directors, Mr. Gibbon was one of the first taken into custody. And in the final sentence, the measure of his fine proclaimed him eminently guilty. The total estimate which he delivered on oath to the House of Commons amounted to 106,543 L 5S 6D, exclusive of antecedent settlements. 2 different allowances of 15,000 L and of 10,000 L were moved for Mr. Gibbon, but on the question being put, it was carried without a division for a smaller sum. On these ruins, with the skill and credit of which Parliament had not been able to despoil him, my grandfather, at a mature age, erected the edifice of a new fortune. The labors of 16 years were amply rewarded, and I have reason to believe that the second structure was not much inferior to the first. The next consideration of the legislature after the punishment of the directors was to restore public credit. The schemes of Walpole had been found insufficient and had fallen into disrepute. A computation was made of the whole capital stock of the South Sea Company at the end of the year 1720. It was found to amount to 37,800,000 pounds, of which the stock allotted to all the proprietors only amounted to 24,500,000 pounds. The remainder of 13,300,000 pounds belonged to the company in their corporate capacity and was the profit they had made by the national delusion. Upwards of 8 millions of this were taken from the company and divided among the proprietors and subscribers jointly, making a dividend of 33L 6S 80%. This was a great relief. It was further ordered that such persons as had borrowed money from the South Sea Company upon stock, actually transferred and pledged at the time of borrowing to or for the use of the company, should be free from all demands upon payment of 10% of the sums so borrowed. They had lent about 11 millions in this manner at a time when prices were unnaturally raised, and they now received back 1,100,000 when prices had sunk to their ordinary level. But it was a long time before public credit was thoroughly restored. Enterprise like Icarus had soared too high and melted the wax of her wings. Like Icarus, she had fallen into a sea and learned, while floundering in its waves, that her proper element was the solid ground. She had never since attempted so high a flight. In times of great commercial prosperity, there has been a tendency to over-speculation on several occasions since then. The success of one project generally produces others of the similar kind. Popular imitativeness will always, in a trading nation, seize hold of such successes and drag a community too anxious for profits into an abyss from which extrication is difficult. Bubble companies of a kind similar to those engendered by the South Sea Project lived their little day in the famous year of the panic, 1825. On that occasion, as in 1720, knavery gathered a rich harvest from cupidity. But both suffered when the day of reckoning came. The schemes of the year 1836 threatened at one time results as disastrous, but they were happily averted before it was too late. And that is the end of this chapter, the South Sea Bubble. Thank you so much for being on. You can check the link. YesFinanciallyFree.com. There is a blog post with this title that has a link to this ebook where you can read it on your own. I also have all my recordings there with summaries under each recording that you can read all in one blog post there. So it's readily accessible. So have a great day. Thanks for being on today's live. Aloha, and share this with your friends and followers. If you are a subscriber on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can get notifications when I am live. And I appreciate you very much for being on today. Aloha. And if you